Alright, gamers, it's time for a new episode of Unused Content and Games, and today I've got a new game here, one that I actually don't plan on playing on the channel anytime soon. Yes, I've played some of the other Mario Kart games at the time of me making this video, but this particular one, yeah, I don't plan on playing on here, so this will be the first time, aside from Kirby Superstar, that I do an unused video of a game I haven't played on the channel, nor do I plan on it. So let's start here with Super Mario Kart. Super Mario Kart is a wacky SNES racing game featuring Mario, Luigi, Yoshi, and many other characters from the Mario universe. Also, Donkey Kong Jr. Because why not? This classic, on top of being the ever-popular Mario Kart series, more or less kickstarted the trend of mascot racers as a whole. And the grandfather of all that. But let's start off with its development history. Present among the big July 24, 2020 leaks of Nintendo assets was the Super Mario Kart source code with previously unseen asset tools and probably everything the development team used back in the early 90s. Various sprites, tile sets, maps, etc. can be found in the following directories. These codes over here. Note that the .lzh files contains both compressed lowercase and decompressed uppercase versions of the files, so be sure to make separate directories for them when extracting. For those who want to do that, check the files. Alright, the 1991 alpha is an early build of Super Mario Kart that appears to be a general driving test. The uncompiled code can be found in other .7z/news.7z. With that code here, I'm not going to say the rest of it. The code files are dated from April 18th to July 25th, 1991. Besides the code files, precompiled Intel hex files are also included in the same folders, called that code there and that code there. These files can be directly converted to bootable ROMs, but they will only contain the code data, not any of the asset data. The main difference between these two files is the main menu. More on that below. Credit goes to that guy here, who I guess debugged all that. So why don't we take a look at this here video for a bit. Guess a little debug menu allowed you to test out some of the characters, and I guess their physics, and how they just looked. I noticed like the blue sky drop on the top screen. Well, the bottom one at least has a halfway done sky drop. Well, you can tell they really didn't get the turning down too well. Probably didn't have drifting in there yet. And this first iteration of drifting, which is part of the reason I don't want to play Super Mario Kart, you can tell, look at that awful turn, Jesus Christ. Since drifting in this game, instead of giving a boost like in later games, is mostly used for just turning. Like making really sharp turns, which honestly feels kind of terrible. I mean, it's the first Mario Kart game, come in some slack, as I always say. And this turn, if I was a turn, he was popping a wheelie. That's the end of that. Oh wait, not quite. Don't know why it says control cart. I guess hover. Perhaps it's just had the jump feature that this game has that later games don't entirely have, I guess. Alright. General differences. There is no sound. The only characters present are Mario, Luigi, who uses Mario's graphics with a green palette, again as a test, and Bowser. 5 tracks are presented. H00, K00, K1, K2, and K3. While not entirely certain, it's possible that H tracks were for hover mode and K tracks were for car mode. There's originally going to be a hover mode here, huh? I mean, we'll see that later, starting in I believe Mario Kart 7 with the with the gliders. Right, the ZE2X SCR track was likely one of the tracks used, as it has a timestamp of July 11 to 1991. Now, only one track tile set is loaded within every track. This code here was likely used, and it has a timestamp June 20th, 1991. It also contains water tiles, most likely used for hover mode tracks. At the main menu, appears upon booting the game, and you got these different controls over here. Koopa for Bowser, which, fun fact, is his Japanese name, though spelled like the actual way to spell Koopa, not this way, but yes. So it's more like Koopa. Probably how it was spelled back in the 90s. Anyways, press and start will start the race, such as it is at this point. since again they hadn't made the full menu yet, is merely a debug. In the earlier versions with this code here, the menu only displays two options, car and hover, which will start a race in car and hover mode respectively. Alright, close look at this, the early menu. Just a flat baby blue background with those texts there. And the later one, they switched it to, what is that, like a slight inkish color? Did I go back too far? I think I did. Get it there. The possible font used in the main menu of this build is similar to the possible font used in the November 1991 build. However, it does not include color edges nor the 1x1 tile versions of the font. And here's what the text font looks like. Here's another one. And here's one with a yellow background, totally different. And here's another font. Definitely closer to the final games. A race. Normally a race. As there is no set goal, there is also no items, no HUD, no CPU drivers. There are 6 opponents, but they never move. Since they weren't coded to move yet, likely they hadn't been done yet. And no wall collision. You can drive through everything and even off the course. The starting position is the same on every track, but differs depending on the selected control mode. Kart will put you on the middle left side of the track, while hover starts you in the middle. As can be seen in the kart mode picture below. The driver's starting positions are bunched up together. Other differences, the camera is not always behind you. Other drivers start glitching in the distance and in the near and are very shaky. The background only consists of one layer and is only displayed in player 2's screen, which is like the top bottom screen that we saw before. Kind of like an old school DS. It uses the files back.cgx and the back.scr. The latter can be found in this code here and uses that code sky graphics found in the Pilot Wing source files, which was most likely used for a back.cgx. Pressing select will darken the screen and seem to add a CPU usage meter. Pressing R while the game is paused will advance one frame. Pressing Y plus B plus select plus start will reset the game. Kart mode's physics are very different than in the final game. You cannot drift or hop, as I mentioned during that video. Driving in reverse with Y is buggy. You need to steer first, then hold Y. The camera will also be locked. It is also possible to brake or to drive in reverse with A. Hover mode controls similar to a hovercraft. Strong handling with fast rotation. And pressing up decreases the handling, while pressing down increases it. Unlike in kart mode, driving in reverse is not possible here. This control mode, in the presence of a guy in a hovercraft, in that code there, and the water tile is found in that code there, point to an early idea of racing with hovercraft machines, which was ultimately scrapped early on. Likely because of system limitations, that could be it. Now here's a closer look at those. I went back too far again. Alright, kart mode starting positions with that code, and hover mode starting positions with this code here, right in the middle of the track. Alright, restore background with back.scr and h.cgx files. Or earlier versions. The early version of this code here, dated on June 10th, 1991, is 15 days older than the other code, which is dated on June 25th of 1991. Besides a different main menu, there are also some small differences in game. There is only a single generic driver graphic loaded, but with 3 different palettes. This lines up with a statement by Hideki Kono in an Iwata-esque interview, claiming that the game wasn't turned into a Mario title until about 3 to 4 months after we started development, when we had created a prototype involving 2 carts racing simultaneously. The angle and size of the driver's graphics are arranged differently, including a close-up graphic displayed when other driver is very near the camera, as shown on the screenshot on the right, but okay. Something like this doesn't exist in later builds. The graphic files with this code here include a close-up graphic. In kart mode, it is sometimes required to hold up or down for several seconds while the beats start driving. And handling it in hover mode is less strong than in that code there. The camera in hover mode isn't always behind the driver. In this code here, it's always fixed behind the driver. Only 2 tracks can be loaded in one per mode. Characters are actually the color palettes, cannot be selected. Player 1 will load the first driver palette and player 2 the second one. 4 of the other 6 opponents load the third palette, while 2 of them use the ones of the human players. And here's a closer look at that. They kind of look like Excite Bike racers, only in those normal, carts. Alright, build files. The included source files are sufficient to build the later of the 2 builds. With a proper assembler, the later alpha can be built from the source files included in the order of appearance in the build. Each ASM file can be assembled into its respective REL file, and the REL files can be linked together to form the build. However, in Kimura/EXP already included pre-assembled REL files, which can be linked to form the later builds. Enter with these codes here, as you can see, as well as these codes here. Give you a second if you'd like to take a sec to read them. Alright, setting the prog section to be assembled at $0, colon 8000 will create the build identical to that code there and build. However, since neither of the builds include asset codes, we cannot be certain of what the asset of this build would have been. The car.cgx file with the font type was directly referenced to that code there and drops directly in place in the game and works as is, so we are fairly sure that this game of the file was used in this build. This does not mean it for certain was used, only that it is highly likely that it was. The only other info for certain assets used was the reference to Mario.cgx and Koopa.cgx, likely for Bowser, who are the internal names of the sprite sheets of Mario and Bowser, who would have guessed, respectively. These files needed to be rearranged since the prototype renders the 2x2 tile character sprite differently than the way they are formatted in the leak.cgx files. Alright, well, that'll be it for part 1 of unused content and Super Mario Kart. And if you enjoyed this, learn something new and you want to see more, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. And one of the videos you're seeing right now, and that bell button for more. Consider answering the question today of the things we went over so far. What do you wish was in the final game? Why? Perhaps that hover mode. Had they expanded upon that more, would have been pretty cool. Anyways, in the next episode, in part 2, we'll look at the November 29, 1991 prototype. Thank you all for watching, and have a berrific day.